Hi, we're here with QB Gaming Comic Seller in Memphis, Tennessee. We're doing our Memphis Plays Modern. And this is David, and he's playing Restore Balance. Some people are very known to that card because they like the combo. So, David, can you tell us more about your deck?
Yeah, sure.
That you played today?
So, the whole premise of the deck is to cast Restore Balance, which will hinder your opponents by hitting their lands, it's going to hit their creatures, and it's going to hit their hands. And the way that we break the symmetry of balance is by setting up with these border posts. So the border posts have an alternate casting cost of paying 1, returning a basic land to your hand to put the border post into play tapped. Restore Balance does not hit artifacts, which the border posts are, so you can already put yourself behind on lands. Additionally, you have Simian Spirit Guide, which can help you just cheat out one of your Cascade spells, which is the way that you're going to run into balance. The key to the deck is really just waiting until your opponent has overextended, wait for them to play 4 or 5 creatures, get 1 or 2 lands ahead of you, and then cascade into a balance and set them way behind and use that tempo swing to try to win the game.
And then basically you start putting things like Nahiri and
try to drop a win
or a greater Gargadon even, because basically when you do Restore Balance, after that you can say, hey, I'm gonna put a greater Gargadon, let's go.
Yep.
So, okay, this is cool. So, now I do see you have Mogus, God of Slaughter.
Yes.
That's, I'm not very familiar with the deck, but tell me more about that.
A lot of people don't run Mogus, God of Slaughter. They run 4 Nahiris, because Nahiri is a solid win con, and really the win con of the deck is Emrakul. However, I found that against control decks, a lot of times they have a hard time answering a Mogus, because most of the time he's just going to be an indestructible enchantment that deals them 2 damage on their turn.
Yes.
So it reminds people of the old magic card Impatience. Whenever a player doesn't play a spell, Impatience deal 2 damage to them.
Yeah, it's very similar to that.
Okay.
So it works very well against them. They can Echoing Truce it, they can Cryptic Command, they can bounce it back to your hand again, but they don't see it coming. And there's a lot of times it's going to deal a significant amount of damage prior to it leaving. It's also worth noting that there is a chance that Mogus can become active because your border posts do have colored mana symbols to add to his devotion.
Yes.
So if you have 2 border posts and a Gargadon or a Nahiri in play, Mogus is active and suddenly you have a 7/5 swinging at him. That's indestructible. If a greater Gargadon is suspended and they try to path it, you can just sacrifice one of your artifacts and turn it off again. So there's a lot of flexibility. I've had people try to get rid of Mogus via Path to Exile or some other removal spell, and then suddenly he's not a creature anymore. And their spell fizzles, and they're still taking 2 on their turn.
Oh, and that's a great. I actually haven't thought about that. That's a very neat tech. And then obviously have stuff like Beast Within and Maelstrom Pulse, and the expertise just to get rid of stuff in case they're too quick. Correct?
Yes. So the expertise is a new addition to the deck. I like it because I can sweep the board and maybe drop a mana rock. I can just cast it and sweep the board. I used to run Anger of the Gods, but being able to potentially sweep the board and then drop a balance to really hit hard, get empty balances out of my hand so I don't have to wait 6 turns for the suspend cost is very significant. The one problem that the deck does sometimes face is Restore Balance doesn't hit artifacts, it doesn't hit enchantments, it doesn't hit planeswalkers. So I opted to run with a 3-1 split of Beast Within and Maelstrom Pulse. Beast Within I like primarily because it can hit anything. If there's a problem land, I can hit it. Maelstrom Pulse can't hit lands, but it does a very good impression of a Wrath against a tokens deck.
Yes.
So I anticipated there being some number of token decks here, so I went ahead and put one of those in over the Beast Within.
And then obviously you have Demonic Dread and Violent Outburst to get your Restore Balances out. So that's that's pretty cool. Now, you've played against some of the decks today. Like, what is something that is there a card that you may wanna have put into the deck? But you're like, no. But after today, you will probably want to put into the deck.
As far as the main deck goes, I've been pretty happy with it. Mogus, God of Slaughter wasn't as relevant today as he has been for me before, but I was facing against mostly aggressive creature-based decks, and this is better versus a controlling spell-based deck. So he was sided out more often than not, but I also didn't face any control decks today. My sideboard options, however, is because of time constraints, I didn't get 4 copies of Slaughter Games in my sideboard, so it's 2 Slaughter Games and 2 Lost Legacies, which would have been more helpful versus the Scapeshift matchup, as he was able to counter my answer to Escape Shift because I didn't have the Slaughter Games.
The Slaughter Games, yeah.
So Slaughter Games in the sideboard, definitely. I need to make it a priority to pick up 2 more of those to complete the sideboard. Everything else in the sideboard, though, worked just fine. I run 3 Ley Lines of Sanctity for any type of burn matchup or rock matchup like Jund or Abzan. Anything that's going to make me discard a lot. I run 3 Ley Line of the Voids to hit any type of graveyard-based decks.
Yes.
It's also pretty good against any of the Grixis control decks. They're trying to get value off of Snapcaster Mages. I run 3 Ricochet Traps for control decks just to help me counter their counterspell. And I run 2 copies, I run 1 copy each, 1 Ingot Chewer and 1 Wispmare. So they're basically the same card.
Yes.
Ingot Chewer's red, it just,
And
you
then-
can invoke it for an artifact.
And
Wispmare
then it's white, right?
for the enchantment.
Yes.
Yeah. A lot of other decks I've seen, they've ranked to run multiple copies of those 2 cards, but I feel with Beast Within and Maelstrom Pulse, just having a 5th removal spell that's relevant to the matchup seems to be enough. I didn't really feel like upping those numbers very high, because having multiple copies to answer combo decks I felt was more important.
Now, is there any matchups that are just really bad for you that you don't necessarily want to play against? Like, tell us like how you can possibly battle that matchup.
So the hardest matchup is the combo decks. Anything that's non-interactive, especially if they don't put creatures in play, because if they don't have a creature in play, it turns off your Demonic Dread. So the trade-off is I'm running a more solid, stable mana base by running Jund colors. However, Demonic Dread might not fire. Whereas other decks have opted to run Ardent Plea, but now they're running blue in the deck, and they're running a 4-color deck like we are, but they're more reliant on making sure they have the right colors in play.
Exactly.
Versus me, where it's like, well, if I have a white source, it's kind of cool, but I don't have to have a white source right now to win. So any non-interactive combo deck, that's probably the hardest matchup to go against, which is why I want to put 4 Slaughter Games in the sideboard. I might try to adjust that a little, take out the Wispmare and the Ingot Chewer and put in a couple more combo hoser cards. But any type of creature-based matchup, any type of fair deck, I did really well against. I played against Jund, I went 2-0. It was a very quick game. Just, he couldn't recover after a balance.
Well, obviously, I mean, and you have enough cards to basically say, hey, I'm here to stay.
Could an extra option for a game ender other than the Nahiri Emrakul idea could possibly be like maybe Gurmang Angler or Tassiger, if you're able to if you already have the cards in your graveyard, maybe delve them out to put in a big guy to swing in?
Those could work too. The reason why I didn't opt for those is because they're vulnerable to Path to Exile. I wanted my threats to be diverse and attack from different angles. So I could either get a Gargadon in play with you having no lands and just beat you to death in 2 or 3 turns. Nahiri attacks from a different angle. She's a planeswalker, so she's more vulnerable to some things, but less to others. Of course, dropping Emrakul into play is just backbreaking for most decks. And then Mogus being indestructible and sometimes not a creature, he can also avoid various forms of removal. Whereas Gurmag Angler, Tassiger, they can give you some card advantage, but at the same time, they're more vulnerable to the removal format.
And I mean, you obviously have Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C in your deck, because this is basically your Plan A.
Yes.
This is, I'm guessing, Plan B.
Yes. Gargadon's
And then Plan C.
Yes. Yeah.
So because there's so many decks running Surgical Extraction, so if you do happen to get an Emrakul in your hand, pitch it to Nahiri, and they can just say, oh, Surgical Extract, and then you're basically out of something. But you can always, go back to the Plan B side, and if that doesn't work, then I mean, this is a great addition. I love the fact that you put Mogus in there, because you don't have 2 plans, now you have 3, just in case.
And the fact that if he gets hosed with the Emrakul stuck in his hand, if he has a restore balance go off, he can just discard down to that card, and one of them being Emrakul.
No, and I mean, even the thing is, like, I believe there's not that many decks that can handle all 3 of these plans.
Yeah, if you're sideboarding against the deck, you have to think about, okay, well, I'm trying to stop the balance from going off, but he also had Nahiri, so maybe I should bring in a Pithy Needle to stop that. Oh, I can't take my removal spells out because Greater Gargadon can hit me, and he still has that Mogus floating around somewhere in the deck. And you could try to hit me on the artifacts, except I only run 8 of the Border Post, as opposed to some decks which like to run about 12 to 16. So even if you bring an artifact hate, it doesn't hinder me as much. You might set me back a turn, but I'll just start playing my lands and not worry about it.
And I mean, like I said, I really like the fact that Mogus is out. You said it's very hard to deal with, especially with the control matchups like Grixis Delver. I mean, they have to basically counter the Mogus, or even if they remand it, I think you're okay with that.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, this is great. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
Probably the most important part about the deck is keeping track of your timing. You have to remember a lot of triggers with the deck. It's not an easy deck to pilot. It's very complex. If I had to pull out an MVP card of the deck, I would say it would probably be Violent Outburst. Because it's instant speed, you can just insert it where you want to in the stack in response to something, and are effectively just putting a balance in that spot.
Into that.
And
Plus the
when you're
bonus
able
fact that
to-
you don't have to target with Violent Outburst either.
Exactly.
And
And casting balance is backbreaking, but casting balance in response to your opponent doing something, like at the end of their draw step before their main phase when they have one extra card in hand and you force that extra discard, or cracking your fetch lands so that suddenly you have 3 less lands than your opponent thought you did, and then dropping a balance, and then after balance resolving, you get to fetch out 3 lands, so it didn't hit you at all. It
Just
can-
reminds me of end of draw phase Esper Charmden. Just reminds me of that.
It's
So backbreaking.
I mean, it's just good. I mean, the timing obviously has to be right, and that's the thing. Sometimes, being a new player coming to a format, this deck might not necessarily be the best. Just to I'm just gonna pick up this deck and play.
Yeah.
So, I mean, one thing that I do have to ask is, how did you come to why did you want to play this deck? How did you come to play this deck?
I like to play fringe decks. My other 2 decks I play is 7-Land Belcher and Shred. I just enjoy playing decks that aren't mainstream. I like turning when Thoughtseizes against me and my opponent saying, "What are you doing? I don't know what to take." Those are the kind of plays that I like. And even though the deck might not be like a tier 1 taking down GP level, it's fun for me for the fact that I get to get some laughs. People don't see a balance coming. Once they know what you're doing, they're like, "Wow, I don't know how to play against your deck because it's so wonky and attacks from such a weird angle." And those are the things that I really enjoy about it.
So basically, and that's another thing. You're basically saying that you're kind of not necessarily attacking in sort of way, but you're giving your opponent that puzzled look, especially when they Thoughtseize, because they might not know how to play against this deck.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of players that they know of this deck, but they don't know the ins and outs.
Mostly because the odds of playing the deck are
Yeah.
between 1 in every 60 games.
Yeah.
I mean, I bet if you picked up another deck and you were faced against this, you could probably beat it since you have played this deck and kind of understand it.
I don't know. I think it would depend on the matchup. Scred I've play tested Scred against this deck versus my friends where they were playing Scred, I was playing Balance. They know how the deck works, and it's about 50-50. I mean, sometimes Scred can just land a Blood Moon at an opportune time, and suddenly my mana base is shot despite the fact that I've run 6 basics and all fetches to go find them. It just depends on timing. This deck does suffer from not having any manipulation in it, so sometimes I don't draw a Violent Outburst or a Demonic Dread when I really need to, and I draw lands for 3 turns, and I have nothing to do to stop that,
Yeah.
There's a lot of variation there, and I'm trying to work the variation out, but it just takes time. But yeah, I really do enjoy it.
I mean, like I said, I definitely love the additions that this deck has had. I remember, the other balanced decks playing the 12 posts, and I mean, this is great. I love it. I love your rendition of this deck is amazing. 3 different plans, and have a way to get rid of stuff early just in case. So that's good. Is there anything else? I know you have a store that you wanted to
Yes,
talk about.
so if y'all want to find out more about the deck, go to mainphasemtg.net. I have 2 articles on there. One of them giving a brief overview of the deck. Another one going to some of those intricate plays I talked about, using Violent Outburst in the stack, and it discusses the stack and priority for newer players, and just some technical plays you can do, depending on what you have in play, depending on what your opponent's playing. So go check it out. I do a deck tech on there, and there's no gameplay footage yet, but hopefully one day.
Yes, I'm sure we'll have it sometime soon, right? All right, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for letting us see your deck.
Yep, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.